Agent Daniel Cross had seen many shocking things in his 15 years with the FBI, but nothing prepared him for the moment he stood inside the small basement of an ordinary two-story house in Maplewood, Ohio. The smell of dust hung in the air, and a single light bulb swung overhead, casting long shadows across the walls. But it wasn't the smell or the flickering light that made his stomach twist. It was the giant board pinned to the wall, covered in maps, photos, newspaper clippings, and strings connecting everything together like a spider web. At the center of the board, circled in thick red marker, was a picture of the man they had come to arrest, Thomas Hale, a 42-year-old father, husband, and next-door neighbor who everyone thought was the nicest guy in town. A man who coached Little League Baseball on weekends. A man who shoveled snow for older neighbors without being asked. A man who baked cinnamon cookies at Christmas and passed them out around the block. But the board told a different story, a story nobody would have believed if they weren't staring right at it. There were photos of people who had gone missing across different states. Notes written in neat handwriting. GPS coordinates. Newspaper headlines. And at the bottom corner of the board was a locked metal box with cables running into the wall, something Daniel had never seen before in a regular home. He wasn't alone. Behind him stood 3 other agents. All of them were silent. Nobody knew what to say. Nobody knew how a man like Thomas could hide something this big for so long. Daniel lifted his flashlight and whispered, What was he doing all these years? Before anyone could answer, they heard something creak upstairs. Slow. Heavy. Like someone walking. One of the agents pointed upward. He's still in the house. The room went still. Nobody breathed. Daniel reached for his gun. Positions. Now. And just like that, the calm, friendly picture of Thomas Hale shattered into 1,000 pieces. The FBI had uncovered his secret. A secret no one was ready for. Another creak echoed above them, louder this time. Then, a sudden crash. And the team sprinted for the stairs, not knowing whether Thomas Hale was running, hiding, or waiting for them. Just a few months before that moment, nobody in Maplewood would have guessed anything was wrong. Thomas Hale seemed like the perfect neighbor. He lived in a blue house with a neat lawn and white shutters. He worked at the post office, sorting letters and waving at kids who passed by. Every morning he packed lunch for his daughter Emma before school. Every evening he sat on the porch with his wife, Laura, sipping iced tea and talking about simple things, weather, work, and the next town festival. To most people, he wasn't just normal. He was better than normal. He was the kind of man people trusted. People greeted him with warm smiles. Hey Tom. Good to see you, Tom. Kids called him Coach Hale, and he always had stickers in his pockets for the little ones. He remembered everyone's birthdays. He mowed his lawn every Saturday at 9 a.m., like clockwork. He kept pet birds, 3 small parakeets, that chirped happily from the kitchen window. Nobody saw the tiny cracks forming. Not even Laura, who had been married to him for 14 years. But Thomas had a secret routine. One he hid carefully, quietly, and without ever making a mistake. Every Tuesday night, after telling his family goodnight, he pretended to go to bed. He waited until everyone was asleep. Then, without making a sound, he slipped out of the house through the garage door. He always drove the same old brown car, never his regular one. He took the long way out of town. He shut off his phone. He never stopped at places with cameras. Sometimes he was gone for hours. When he came back, he always looked the same, calm, steady, normal. Laura never suspected a thing. Meanwhile, the FBI was dealing with a different problem. A strange pattern involving missing people across several states. The cases were years apart, nothing connected them at first. Different towns, different ages, different backgrounds. But Agent Daniel Cross noticed something that everyone else missed. Each person who went missing had received a letter shortly before they disappeared. A simple letter. No return address. Always typed. Always containing a short message. Just one sentence. We need to talk. Daniel spent months building a theory. At first, nobody believed him. The cases were too different. But he kept digging. And slowly, he found clues pointing to small towns, quiet areas where nobody paid attention to strangers. Then one day, he found something strange. One of the missing people had once lived in Maplewood, Ohio. And another missing person had visited Maplewood for a week the year before. That tiny detail, 2 tiny threads, led Daniel to dig into Maplewood's public records. That's when he found Thomas Hale, who had recently taken short out-of-town trips that lined up with some of the disappearances. It wasn't proof, but it was a start. Daniel began watching Thomas quietly. Weeks passed. Thomas's life looked completely normal. Too normal, almost like he wanted to look harmless. Then came the break the FBI needed. A letter addressed to a woman in West Virginia was intercepted after the family reported suspicious mail. When Daniel saw the short message on the card, "We need to talk," his heart jumped. It matched the others. The envelope had been sorted through Maplewood's post office, meaning someone who worked there had touched it, meaning someone in Maplewood was involved. Daniel dug deeper, and deeper, and deeper. All the threads kept pointing back to the same man. Thomas Hale. A man who smiled too easily. A man who blended in too perfectly. A man who left behind almost no digital footprint. Even the neighbors described him the exact same way. He's just a friendly guy. Nothing unusual. That, Daniel knew, was the most frightening thing of all. The night the FBI raided Thomas's home began like any normal Tuesday. Thomas tucked his daughter into bed, read her a story, kissed her forehead, told her goodnight. Then he told Laura he needed to run to the store to grab milk. He didn't know the FBI had already surrounded the block. Unmarked vans, silent radios, agents moving like shadows around his house. When he got into his car, Daniel watched from across the street, heart pounding. "Wait for the signal," the team lead whispered. Thomas turned the ignition. Then Daniel saw it, something strange. Instead of driving toward the store, Thomas drove in the opposite direction, toward the woods. "Move," Daniel ordered. "He's not buying milk tonight." The chase began. Thomas wasn't speeding, which made it worse. He drove calmly, as if he had practiced this many times. The agents followed from a distance until he pulled into a small dirt clearing. There, he got out and disappeared into the trees with a flashlight. Daniel swallowed hard. What is he doing out here, at midnight? The team followed quietly, but Thomas slipped away faster than any of them expected. When they finally reached the clearing, they didn't find Thomas. They found something else. A wooden shed, old, hidden behind trees, covered in vines. The lock had been broken recently, as if someone had come here often. The team pushed open the creaking door and stepped inside. That was the moment everything changed. Inside the shed, they found a small desk, a dusty laptop, and a stack of typed letters, each one identical to the ones sent to the missing people. But the most chilling thing was a map pinned to the wall, marked with dates and locations. One of the dates was tonight, and the location was Thomas's own home. The room fell into dead silence. Daniel whispered, "He's planning something." Another agent pointed to the headlights through the trees. "He's going back to the house." And that was when everything spiraled fast. They returned to Thomas's home within minutes. The lights in the house flickered. The front door was unlocked. The air inside felt colder than it should. Upstairs, they heard the creak, then the crash. And now, the team raced up the basement stairs, weapons drawn, hearts pounding, adrenaline burning through their chests. All they knew was this. Thomas Hale, the friendly neighbor with the nicest smile in Maplewood, had been hiding something dark for years. And tonight, his secret was finally coming undone. Daniel reached the top of the stairs first and pushed open the door, only to freeze. Because standing at the end of the hallway was Emma, Thomas's 10-year-old daughter. Her eyes were wide, her hands were shaking, and she whispered 4 words that made Daniel's blood run cold. "Daddy said to hide." Before Daniel could respond, a loud, heavy thud echoed from the bedroom behind her. Something, or someone, had fallen. Daniel froze. Emma stood trembling in the hallway, her small fingers gripping the edge of the door frame. Her eyes were full of fear, but also confusion, like she didn't understand what was happening, only that something was very wrong. Another thud came from the bedroom behind her. This one heavier, sharper, like something being dropped or knocked over. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. "Emma, move toward me." Slowly. The girl didn't move. Her voice cracked. He said not to come out until he came back." "Where is your dad now?" one of the agents whispered behind Daniel. Emma shook her head. "I don't know. He ran upstairs. And then I heard the door lock." Daniel looked at the 3 agents with him. Their faces were tense, alert, ready. They had no idea if Thomas was armed. They had no idea if he had someone in the house. They had no idea what he had been planning tonight. Another thump sounded from the bedroom, this one followed by a slow dragging noise. Daniel's instinct screamed, "Move." Now, he stepped into the hallway, motioning for Emma to come to him. "It's okay. You're safe. Come here." Emma took one shaky step when suddenly, The bedroom door behind her began to open. Very, very slowly. A thin crack of darkness appeared first. Then the door pushed wider, creaking quietly, like someone was pressing it with the gentlest touch. Daniel lifted his gun. The other agents did too. "Emma, get down," he shouted. The girl dropped to her knees just as the doorway opened fully, revealing nothing. Absolutely nothing. The room was empty. The lights were off. The window was closed. The curtains were still. No movement. No shadow. No sign of Thomas. But the noise. Where had it come from? And why did it sound like someone was inside just a moment ago? Daniel stepped forward and flicked the light switch on. The room glowed bright. Everything was exactly in place except for one thing. The bed had been pushed slightly away from the wall. Not much. Just enough that someone could have squeezed behind it. Daniel moved slowly, carefully, his fingers steady on the trigger. He bent down, peered behind the bed. Nothing. He stood up, puzzled. How did he? Before he could finish his thought, an agent at the end of the hall called out. Doors opened downstairs. Daniel's stomach dropped. Thomas had slipped past them. Somehow, quiet as a whisper, fast as a shadow. He had been in the room when they came up the stairs. Daniel felt it in his bones. Thomas was no ordinary man. He had planned exits. He had planned hiding places. He had planned escape routes inside his own home. Daniel grabbed Emma gently by the shoulders. "Where's your mom?" "In her room," Emma whispered, pointing down the hall. "Laura." Daniel signaled 2 agents. "Secure the wife. Move." The agents rushed down the hallway. Daniel lifted Emma and carried her downstairs, keeping her close against his chest as she shook with fear. Every corner of the house felt wrong. Every shadow felt like Thomas could be standing there, watching. They reached the living room. The front door was wide open. Cold air blew in. Daniel cursed under his breath. He carefully set Emma on the couch. "Stay here. Don't move. We will protect you." Emma clutched a small stuffed bear. "Is Daddy going to hurt us?" Daniel paused. He could not lie. "I don't know yet, but we won't let anything happen to you." Agents spread through the downstairs rooms. Cabinets, closets, bathroom, pantry. Every space was checked. Nothing. No Thomas. Then Laura Hale came rushing down the stairs, escorted by 2 agents. She looked terrified. Her robe was half-buttoned, and her hair was messy like she had been woken up suddenly. "What is going on? Where's Tom? Why are you in my house?" Daniel stepped forward. "Please stay calm. Do you know where your husband is?" "No. He told me to stay in the bedroom when he came home. He said something strange was happening outside. I thought he was trying to protect us." Daniel's eyes narrowed. Thomas had known they were coming. But how? Did he make any phone calls? Did he use the computer? Daniel asked. "No," Laura said, her voice shaking. "He just came in and told me to lock the door. Then he ran out again." Daniel turned to one of the agents near the doorway. "Check the street cameras. Check neighbors' cameras. Check anything that faces the road." The agent nodded and ran outside. Daniel paced back and forth, thinking fast. Thomas was trained. Not officially, but clearly trained by someone. Nobody escaped FBI positions this easily, unless they already knew how agents moved, how agents thought, how raids worked. Unless Thomas had been studying them for years. Daniel caught his breath. That board in the basement. The notes. The maps. The patterns. These weren't the notes of a random amateur. This was someone who did deep research. Someone who planned for every detail. Someone who knew the FBI would come sooner or later. And maybe, someone who wanted them to. A sudden crash from the kitchen made everyone jump. Agents ran toward the sound with guns drawn. But it was just a tray that had slid off the counter. Still, Daniel didn't like the timing. Nothing felt random tonight. Emma tugged at Daniel's jacket. "Agent, sir. Daddy told me something before he ran upstairs." Daniel knelt down. "What did he say?" Emma hesitated. "He said, 'I'm sorry you had to see this.'" Daniel swallowed hard. This wasn't just a man running. This was a man carrying out a plan. A plan that started years ago. A plan that was now unfolding piece by piece. Outside, the street was chaotic. Police cars and black FBI vehicles formed a tight circle around the house. Neighbors watched from behind curtains. Some whispered. Some filmed. Some stared in shock, unable to believe friendly, helpful Thomas Hale was at the center of a federal hunt. Snowflakes drifted through the cold night air. The moonlit sky looked peaceful, too peaceful for a night like this. Daniel stepped outside, scanning everything. "He's not far," he said. "He's watching. He wants to see how we react." The lead tech agent jogged up to him, out of breath. "We got something." Mrs. Elliott's doorbell camera caught a figure leaving the house 2 minutes ago. "Show me," Daniel demanded. The agent pulled up the video on a tablet. It was blurry, dark, and shaky. But the silhouette was clear enough, a man slipping out the side of the house, staying low, moving along the bushes. Thomas. But something was off. "Pause it," Daniel said. "Zoom in." The agent zoomed. Daniel leaned closer. Thomas was holding something. Not a weapon. Not a bag. Not keys. A phone. A phone Daniel had taken from him during a previous search when they matched the intercepted mail to his workplace. A phone that should have been in FBI custody. Daniel felt cold inside. How did he get that? The tech agent swallowed. "We think he took it back." "From where?" Daniel asked. A long silence. "From the evidence van." Daniel spun around. "What? How?" The agent's face went pale. "Someone opened the van earlier. The lock wasn't forced. It looks like someone used the exact code." Daniel's blood ran cold. This was not the work of a random postal worker. Thomas knew too much. He had access to things he shouldn't. He had knowledge nobody should have unless he had FBI-level training. Or someone with FBI-level training was helping him. Daniel's mind raced. "Trace the phone. Now." The tech agent nodded and ran toward the van parked on the street. Daniel took a slow breath. He had dealt with criminals. He had dealt with masterminds. He had dealt with people who hid things for years. But Thomas was different. He lived a normal life so perfectly that nobody had ever seen behind the mask. Until now. Inside the house, Laura sat beside Emma on the couch. She was crying quietly, holding her daughter close. "I don't understand. Tom isn't like this. He's a kind man. He loves us. He loves this town. He would never hurt anyone." Daniel wished he could believe that. He said gently. "I need to ask something important. Has your husband ever talked about secrets? Anything from his past? Anything that didn't make sense?" Laura shook her head. "No, he told me he grew up in Nebraska. He told me he worked at a bakery before moving here. He told me his parents died when he was young. Nothing strange." Daniel frowned. There were no records of Thomas growing up in Nebraska. No bakery. No parents' names. Nothing. Almost as if someone had wiped out his past and given him a new one. "Has he ever gone anywhere unusual? Trips you didn't understand?" "Only a few work trips," Laura said. "He never liked traveling." "Work trips. But Thomas worked at the post office. He didn't need business trips." Daniel wrote that down in his notebook. Before he could ask more, the front door burst open and the tech agent rushed in, panting. "We traced the phone." Daniel stood. "Where is he?" The agent swallowed hard. "You're not going to like it." Daniel's chest tightened. "Tell me." The tech agent pointed upward. "He's still inside the house." Daniel's eyes widened. "That's impossible. We swept everything." The agent shook his head. "No, we only swept the main rooms. The signal comes from a small space above the hallway ceiling. A crawl space. A hidden crawl space. A hiding place no one had checked yet." Daniel's voice turned sharp. "Everyone, move. Now." Agents swarmed into the hallway, guns drawn. They scanned the ceiling. The lights flickered again, not because of a bulb, but because something moved above them. A soft tapping, like fingers brushing wood. Emma screamed and Laura pulled her close. Daniel pointed to the ceiling. "Up there." An agent dragged over a ladder. Daniel climbed it, heart pounding so loud he could feel it in his ears. He pushed on the square ceiling panel. It didn't budge. He pushed again. Still nothing. Then, a voice from above whispered, "Daniel." Daniel froze. He knew that voice. It wasn't Thomas. It was deeper, older, softer. A voice he hadn't heard in years. A voice from Daniel's past. A voice he thought was dead. His mentor, former agent Reed Maddox. Daniel's heart almost stopped. Reed had disappeared 5 years ago. Everyone thought he had died undercover. But now, from the darkness of the crawl space, that same voice spoke again. "You finally found the boy I told you about." Daniel's blood ran cold. Thomas wasn't the mastermind. Thomas wasn't working alone. Thomas was being trained. By Reed Maddox, a missing FBI agent. Daniel pushed on the ceiling tile one more time. And suddenly, it gave way. A hand shot out from the darkness, grabbed Daniel by the wrist, and pulled him upward. Everything went black.